Hello and welcome to the new episode of Access Up Space Defense and Security Podcast, Policy, Profit and Progress, India's Space Sector Review of our 2024. So, we have previously discussed several aspects of the India space technology, the maritime domain as well. I think maritime domain is something that we have covered extensively in 2024, rather than the space domain. But today we'll be taking a deep dive into the space domain and the activities of India in 2024 and what we can expect in the next year and beyond as well. And today's guest is a returning guest. I mean, he doesn't need an introduction. He has done extensive work, not only in science and technology, but in the political science as well, some of the policy aspects as well. So, without any delay, I would like to welcome back again on this podcast, Dr. Chaitanya Giri. Hi, Chaitanya. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Omkar. It's so nice to be with you again and with your listeners.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, like your previous podcast episode received a great response. I mean, I wanted to do more episode right then and there after 2 or 3 months, but we kind of moved the track towards covering more maritime aspects due to the current geopolitical landscape issues that are going on. And so, yeah, finally we have started again, taking deep dive into some of the space industry topics. And I believe when speaking on some of the strategic issues of the India space industry, with cost functional areas like geopolitics and how it affects the international relations as well. So I think there are several other individuals, but I think in my network, you are the best person to go with to review these activities in the industry. And without any delay, I would like to take a jump into the topic. Regarding the kind of activities that we have been doing at the moment. So, can you briefly highlight the key developments in the Indian space sector from both commercial and the government perspectives? Because I believe, apart from FDI or even the India space policy initiatives, the institutionalization that has been starting over since past 1 or 2 years. Apart from this, what are the movements from the government and the commercial sector that you have observed from your perspective?
Yeah. So 2023-24 have been really busy year for the Indian space program. And I have been saying this on various platforms that the Indian space program is no more ISRO centric. It has now acquired two additional dimensions. You have commercial players now who are operating on dual use technologies, who are wanting to venture into that. And then there is, of course, the defense space program, which was under the shadows for quite some time. But since 2019, since the establishment of the Defense Space Agency, uh, that that defense space program has also sort of metamorphosed into something that is now a tangible customer and a vociferous developer of technological needs that ensure India's security in a comprehensive way. So 2023-24 were quite busy. So if I look back, the year started with a bang, especially with the announcement of the Mission Dev Space challenges. So these were the space sector challenges. These were the projects that were advertised by the Ministry of Defense, and these were nearly 70 challenges that were posed to the Indian commercial sector. Um, I am of the belief, and I am of the strong opinion that the Indian commercial sector, which is right now still in its nascency, in its infancy, it needs multiple customers. So it can't depend on, or it can't be replacing ISRO, immediately. It needs many more customers within the country and outside the country. And amongst these new customers, the defense sector, the defense needs of the country happen to be one area where the commercial space players can sort of stay afloat, get continuous business contracts, and Mission Dev Space Challenges exactly did that. I am of the know that there are nearly 30 to 35 good startups that have picked up not only one but more than one space challenges uh, 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 of whatever was advertised. Thereafter came uh, the announcement and the news about the Indian Human Spaceflight Program. We made that foray by now being one of the few Asian countries to have some kind of activities happening on the International Space Station. Now, this wasn't the case earlier. India has been having steadfast relations with the United States, with Japan, with Russia, with the European Space Agency, with whom we have very strong bilateral relations. But it never culminated into a kind of really high tech, cutting edge human spaceflight partnerships. So, thanks to the initial hand holding by the Russians, by the French, that we got those initial trainings for our the first astronaut corps, and of the first four designate astronauts that we have now, who were announced again in the last 1 year or so. You have one astronaut who's now right now training, who's now in the advanced stages, and maybe sometime in the next 6 months, an Indian astronaut will be up there on the Indian space on the International Space Station. And while I goofed up there on the Indian Space Station, there are very strong preparations right now going on to make sure that both Gaganyaan and its precursor missions, as well as the Bharatiya Antariksh Station, which is now that's the name given to it. Uh, so the building blocks of that station are being prepared at this point in time. So that was the second big thing to happen this year. The third big thing that I know of is that we all are knowledgeable about is the announcement of the 1000 crore venture capital fund through in space again for the commercial sector. As I told you, the commercial space sector is right now on a sticky wicket because we did encourage them, we did handhold them, we did give them regulatory clearances on many occasions. But one thing that India still hasn't worked on, and I believe it should start working on a war footing, is to create domestic financial pipelines for these companies and startups. Because if you don't do that, these startups may not remain glued to the Indian cause. They may go to the greener pastures, and there are not very many greener pastures. So you won't want to be in a situation that you nurture and encourage them to a certain extent, but by not giving them enough financial nourishment, they go somewhere else. You don't want to be in that situation. And for that very reason, this 1000 crore venture capital fund, which has come through the Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center, it becomes very important. Now, is 1000 crore enough? I don't think so. It's not enough, but it's a good starting point. Because when, after the Indian general elections, when the first parliamentary gathering happened during the monsoon session, it was then this announcement was made after that. Uh, Along with the fund, there was another announcement for the National Anusandhan Research Foundation, which is which is India's equivalent to the NSF, uh, which is India's equivalent to European Union's Horizon 2020 now, or whatever that is, the big grant giving agency. So that National Anusandhan Research Foundation is giving away over the next 5 years or so, close to $1 billion, close to nearly not $1 billion, sorry, but close to 1 lakh crore, whatever that dollar equivalent or euro equivalent is. And that's a huge sum. So 1 lakh crore for comprehensive basic science research, out of which only 1000 crore for commercial space, research and development. So I think that ratio is a bit skewed towards SNT, general SNT, and there should be more money coming in for commercial space tech and its growth in India. Now, where would that come from? So, if the government has agreed to give out 1,000 crores, then it is easy for the private sector to sort of gather from various sources and make an equivalent sum available of 1,000 crores. So you have 1,000 crore from the government, 1,000 crore from private equity and from domestic institutional investors, and there you have 2,000 crores ready for the 100, 200 startups that you have at this point in time in the space domain in India. Now, again, whether 2,000 crores is enough, so 2,000 crores is enough at this stage when you are just about to cultivate the the psyche of the Indian private equity investor. They don't have the habit of investing in hardware. They don't have the habit of investing in long gestation technologies, which space sector is. So at least for the next 3 or 4 years, 2,000 crores should be enough. But once you achieve that experiential learning regarding how to finance startups, how to finance Indian startups with Indian ethos and with Indian sensibilities, then there could be more money coming in, flowing in, and you won't then need uh, an in-space grant to be the convincing element. At this point in time, the 1,000 crore is just to convince that these startups are certified, these startups are sort of ratified by InSpace, and whosoever is wanting to invest in the space company would look at that InSpace certification. That okay, if this startup has earned a grant from a fund from InSpace, then it is a safe place to invest. So what will happen is in the next 2 to 3 years, when the initial 1,000 crore or plus comes from the private equity, they'll also have to undertake that steep learning curve that they need to learn what are the parameters to look at when you have to invest in space startups. So, along with government grants coming in, along with the business contracts coming in from mission dev space challenges, or along with the enormous opportunities that lie for Indian space startups, especially in the global south, these are the baby steps that were taken in this particular year.
Interesting. I believe I agree with all of your points that you mentioned, and it's really great that you really mention with a nitty gritty level of all the initiatives, the funds that have been allocated, because I think that's what is needed in this episode, because it's a kind of a recap of all the initiatives and the developments that are happening. And I also agree with the point that you mentioned. It's no more ISRO centric, and really glad to see these developments, because when I was back in India in 2015 and 16, things were not so much privatized back then. I used to see through space and several other companies trying to make their mark in the industry, but I think we didn't had the policies and all the government regulatory stuff in place. That's why things were quite difficult. But really happy to see these developments, that things are much more open now, not only on a domestic level, but there is a international kind of encouragement that is there. Like people from Europe are also trying to buy from the Indian market, and I think that's a huge win for India, because at the end we are going to export, and it's going to contribute a lot towards the Indian economy as well. I mean, like from the space side especially. And as I just mentioned about the international presence, so I'd like to take a jump into this topic, like about the global crisis and in general geopolitical tension. So from your perspective and your experience currently from your research as well, how has the ongoing global crisis, including geopolitical tensions, economic challenges, influenced India's space sector in 2024, especially in terms of funding, collaboration, and international partnerships? Because I believe this, all these elements, some or the other way, they affect the space industry in a lot of ways. Maybe it can hamper the financial growth as well down the line. So, from your perspective, what are your thoughts on this?
So I lost you somewhere in between because of a technical glitch, but I understand. I understood
All right.
the gist of your question.
Yeah.
So if I miss out on anything, just let me know. So,
Sure,
from what I
definitely.
understand the question, yes, there are very strong winds blowing geopolitically, and these are affecting the Indian space sector in a
Yes.
both in a positive way and in a not so positive way. Secondly, there is immense amount of turbulence even within India's neighborhood, and that turbulence is making India think. Uh, uh, on a slightly longer term than it was thinking earlier. So when the Modi administration, if I take it as a starting point, when they began in 2014, you see a lot of talk about make in India. You see a lot of talk about startup India. A big focus on ramping up domestic competencies and capacities, which were untapped for a very long time. And then you see a slew of reforms happening in the space sector, in the IT sector. You have the production linked incentive scheme, which incentivizes foreign investors to come and set up large manufacturing units in certain critical sectors, especially electronics, semiconductors, and whatnot, and doing so with Indian partners. So Indian partners, hand in hand with foreign partners, put together manufacturing units here in India. So, and we've seen tremendous success over the past 4 5 years, especially after the pandemic, when India tried to position itself as a manufacturing hub, uh, and perhaps an alternative even to China. Now, of course, after 4 5 years, after the pandemic, after the Galwan crisis, which happened on the Indo-Chinese frontier, it is now very clear that India cannot really replace China when it comes to large manufacturing volumes. And there is a reason to it. The reason is very simple. The Chinese, when they started manufacturing, had out and out support of the West. Uh, in the think tank circles, we call it as the group of two, which is just the United States and China. They were very well encouraged. The entire West sort of gave away their own manufacturing prowess to China and ensure that China becomes the manufacturer of the world. So China was not manufacturing entirely on its own merit, but there were enablers who ensured that China does so, and it has done wonderfully, but at the cost of environment, at the cost of human rights, at the cost of many other things, which the West, overlooked because it was in the larger interest of the chessboard that was being laid out. Can India do so? Can India get that kind of encouragement? I don't think so. We are not going to get that kind of encouragement because while China manufactured, we didn't manufacture much at all. Whatever was being manufactured was largely for domestic consumption. Those were low value goods. And that is also one of the reasons why it took us so long, especially in the space sector, to come up with this need, uh, where the government felt the urge that you should now encourage MSMEs, small and medium enterprises, and startups. So it has happened only now, only in the past 5 6 years. So what does that do? As India's economy grows from 3.54 trillion dollars, which it is currently, sort of located around. As it moves ahead, it will surpass Japan, it will surpass Germany, and it will rightly so sit at the third position or the second position, just immediately after the United States, China, and there you will have India. Uh, but it will be a large economy, but with a very nascent manufacturing, you know, voluminous manufacturing capacities. And I'm not talking about low value goods manufacturing. I'm talking about high tech manufacturing. So it won't be a free pass. We won't get that kind of free pass that China got, and that also means that the kind of FDI that India was expecting for a very long time, it may not come to us that easily unless and until there is uh, until and unless there is bankruptcy happening in the Western markets. So if you look at the recent trends, you see the incoming Trump administration, you see Elon Musk talking about bankruptcy in the U.S. Domestic economy. So if they go bankrupt, Indian startups, Indian players who are dependent on Western contracts, especially the information technology sector, they should completely reorient themselves well beforehand, uh, and not fall onto their faces when the wave hits them. And by that I mean, there is an immense need to cultivate local investors to invest properly. Uh, Indian startups should not blow out their valuations beyond their means, beyond their real worths. You don't want to create a kind of a Baiju like example in the space tech startup or in the hardware sector. You can't grow that big very fast as Byju's did, but you can't be blowing out your valuations. And many of the startups, they need to understand that rather than focusing on a rapid ascent, on a rapid growth, they should try to look out for a nice steady growth uh, in their business, in the volume that they manufacture, in the revenue and profits that they generate. And they should aim to be important cogs when it comes to supply of certain important components, certain important systems, subsystems. They should not be aiming to build everything on their own when they really don't have the capacities and the talent pool within them to do so. So we've experienced that in the recent past. So whenever there was a RFP coming in from Ministry of Defense or from Department of Space, you would see all startups flocking in the same direction, hunting for the same project. Now that is not a good sign. And the community is so small that everybody knows each other, everybody knows who's working in which startup, uh, and the end user knows what exactly the capabilities of this startup are. And rather than focusing on your core areas, if you're wavering around, if you're trying to grab all the opportunities that you can, now that is not done. So again in 2024, uh, from there were certain opinions that came up from the highest office in India, and it was told to startups that look, you need not grab every project. You should try to work as an ecosystem, which you aren't working as an ecosystem at this point in time. Handhold each other, partner with each other, join your strengths, and be a collective. Work collectively rather than compete with each other and step on each other's toes. So a lot of learning even for the startups. So they are promising, they are really good. They come up on Forbes magazine, they come on Fortune magazine, on they are celebrated by all the Indian embassies and consulates. They get to travel the world, they get all the attention in the media. Yet at the same time, they must understand that there is a lot to learn for them from them. So
Absolutely.
there's a steep learning for everyone, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I agree with this point, especially the RFP one that you mentioned, because I have observed the similar kind of thing here in the European ecosystem as well. Because I mean, even though the European ecosystem is quite old, I would say, as compared to the Indian space ecosystem, but still it has not progressed to the level which United States has. Somewhere there are gaps, somewhere there is not a streamlined organization the way it should happen. So I really agree with that point that people need to actually align with their core expertise and then apply for the government tenders, grants, or any kind of other projects, rather than trying to grab everything for the revenues and try to become a generalist more than becoming an expertise. Because I think in the space industry we need each vertical expert, like if it's a satellite component manufacturer or subsystem manufacturer, you need someone, a company specializing in that only. That company shouldn't become a satellite operator. Otherwise, it becomes more of a generalist. Then the international presence won't be there. The currently a lot of international clients and some of my customers as well are even looking into the Indian market, is because there are companies who are specializing into certain things, like satellite imagery. Like if there are companies who are just focusing on the software products of the space segment, then there are some companies who are focusing only of the maybe software defined radios or transceivers or any kind of hardware stuff. So I think this expertise should be there, because I believe it is very much necessary from the industry perspective as well. And
I'll add
yeah.
something to that. I'll add something to that. So, around 2015, when Make in India was officially launched uh, for the international players, it wasn't launched in India. It was launched very close to where you stay in Hanover, in Germany. So
Okay.
that was where Prime Minister Modi had come to Germany, and he, along with former Chancellor Angela Merkel, together had launched the Lion of Make in India. And there was a massive expo that was laid up in Hanover Messe. I had the privilege of attending it for a good 2 days, and I felt really nice that the Indian government back in those days, especially the then Indian ambassador to Germany, Ambassador Vijay Gokhale, had focused on something very important, which later on did not gain enough traction, and that was Make in India Mittelstand. Now, as you know, and as most of your listeners know, that Mittelstand is the word used for German small family owned businesses. Many of these businesses have been around for generations within the same family. They are not located in the big German cities, they are located in really small towns and villages of Germany, but they've done business for many generations. In some cases, they've been around for good 200 years or so,
Wow.
specializing in kind of product or the the evolutionary line of the same kind of products. So, especially you see with watches, the watch companies that are based in Germany and in Switzerland. So they've excelled in that particular aspect. So what I believe is Indian startups should also take a leaf out of that kind of a model, that you need not ape everything that is happening in Silicon Valley. You need not ape that. So what you need to do is you need to ensure that your company has longevity. Longevity is the need of the hour, and when you start thinking about longevity rather than growing really
Yes.
big really too fast, what that will do is it will make you focus on a certain kind of products, and it will help you hone skills in that products over long periods of time, and make you
Absolutely.
an important cog of the global supply chain. So Indian startups need to think of themselves as suppliers to the global supply chains, and these
Absolutely.
supply chains are enduring. Even if there are conflicts, even if there are wars, uh, you will have some or the other customer coming to you because you are
Yes.
irreplaceable. So try to gain that longevity, try to be irreplaceable is what I would suggest to Indian startups.
Interesting. That's an interesting thing that you mentioned. I was trying to say the exact same thing, but you simplified it in a much more nicer way, I would say. Yeah. So, moving ahead, I mean, we spoke about the startups now. Then I think now we need to hit the point of revenues as well, because I think revenue is something that keeps any company going, and especially when it comes to startups, it's very important for them to kind of scale the revenues. So, from that perspective, this question is: with an increasing focus on revenue generation, how have Indian space startups adapted their business models to balance innovation and profitability? Are there any standout success stories this year from your complete research and the kind of movements that you have seen in the market?
To to not over scrutinize these startups is something that most of us in the Indian space ecosystem, um, we try to ensure that not to over scrutinize them, and we also try to ensure that there is scrutiny enough that they don't fall into the wrong hands and they don't commit mistakes that would not uh, help them resurrect if they fall in some ditch or something. So we have to draw a really fine line, and 5 years or many of the Indian startups are around what 10 years old, 7 8 years old. They've come up around 2015, 2016, that time period. And once you cross the 10-year milestone, you're no more a startup in common parlance. You become an established company. Now, if you become an established company in 10 years, but you are still not making profit, if you are still not generating enough revenue, if you are burning cash, then there is a problem. So rather than making these startups run around from one conference to the other, rather than making them jump from one exhibition to the other, if there is enough skills imparted to these startups to ensure that there is business continuity, that is something that the government must do now. That you've encouraged them, well and good. It was during your previous tenure. For the next 5 years that this government will last, you'll have to ensure that these startups stand on their own feet. How do you do that? So you'll have to give, as Indian government, as the central government, you'll have to give them customers, you'll have to give them business contracts so that there is a steady financial flow into the company and a healthy flow into the company. I don't see any of these startups making any profits at this point in time, to be very frank. None of them have registered good revenues. None of them have, many of them have not demonstrated anything at all. It's just absorbing the capital to build something who we don't know whether it will work or not, whether the global circumstances will help them demonstrate the technology that they are building. We don't know that. So startups are not working on contingencies, and these contingencies are not limited to the contingencies of their own, that are restrictive of them and their investors, but these contingencies should also factor in global geopolitical challenges. What if the capital that you are dependent on, what if it dries up? How would you survive? How would you convince newer customers? So startups will have to talk to newer customers domestically, they'll have to talk to customers in the overseas market. Of course, Europe is perhaps one market for Indian startups, but I don't see Indian startups entering North America because that market is
Yes,
already saturated.
absolutely.
You have the same problem for European startups. European
Yes,
startups can't think of going to the United States across the
yes,
Atlantic.
yes,
So can there be any specific synergies between European and Indian startups? Can you jointly develop something uh, that you can take to the international market? You need to forge those strategic, alliances and partnerships and GVs, which Indian startups are not doing at all.
yes,
As I told you previously, they are stepping on each other's toes. That is the same case as you see in Europe, and this is something that no investor will is going to tell you. You may go to the swankiest
absolutely.
of the accelerator, you may go to the swankiest of the incubator. Uh, you'll get to go to big hotels, big conference venues, where lofty things will be said. But when it comes to brass tacks,
Yes,
uh,
I
these
agree.
are the things that nobody is giving them. So, cultivate new customers, cultivate new clientele, talk to the regional governments, state governments, provincial governments, talk to them, talk to municipal corporations.
Yes,
Are they ready to take some of your imagery? Are they ready to take some of your Satcom based services? Talk to disaster management agencies. Talk to Global South. Global South is extremely vulnerable to climate change. Global South is extremely vulnerable to conflicts. So
yes,
talk to them. Can you provide them solutions that will help the lives of their citizens better?
absolutely.
Uh, of course, India has created a very strong perception. ISRO has a very strong brand image that you need to leverage now,
Yes.
and at much lower, rates. So,
Yes.
at much lower value propositions, because global south is not going to afford the same value propositions that North American and European startups
Yes.
are valued at. So that
Absolutely.
value has to be tamed a bit further, and try to live, try to survive and grow on Indian sentiments, business sentiments. That will take you
Interesting.
much further.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. What all you mentioned, especially the capital absorption that is happening. And I mean, as you're also a consultant, even though similarly, I think we had a kind of path, coming from basic sciences, jumping into political science, and then strategizing. So I think you will relate more to this. What I'm going to say now, it's I've observed in general, not only in India but overall everywhere in the industry, in the private space, is that because most of these companies are not started by the people who have a revenue or the financial strategy mindset. They're started by the engineers. What happens is, like, they first create a product and then go out and start hunting for the customers, but it should be the other way around. you know
Yeah.
it should be the other way around. You need to find the customers first. You need to find at least an approximation. Okay, these are the three areas. Like, the reason I covered this year maritime in an extensive manner is because one of the professors from OP Jindal told me that, Omkar, you are in the space industry, we are from the strategy side of maritime. The thing is, and the people from the science side of maritime, these three people do not come with each other, and that's the reason there is a lack of solutions. Like, we as a strategist try to tell to the people that, okay, you need to have security solutions, because there is a lot of pirate related things and the smuggling which is going on in the South Asian region especially. And because of this smuggling issues, the overall goods of the taxes for the goods is increased, because the government has to deploy like physical security measures. But just imagine if there is a SAR satellite imagery in place, things will be resolved possibly at a very much lower cost. But unfortunately, that is not happening. And because of that one point from the professor, I started covering maritime in an extensive manner. But I hope people and the founders in the space industry have taken a key points which are necessary to kind of develop solutions or kind of look for the market gaps in this area. But I think we really need this kind of mindset, where you try to target or have this potential customer base on an approximation of a research. Okay, so and so in XYZ region we have this many potential customer base, so we can start developing product. But if you go the other way around, I think then you are in a big trouble down the line, because we currently, I don't see, in here in Europe as well. I think it's only some of the French think tanks which say very much openly there is no innovation going on in Europe. It's just everyone is starting a propulsion company. There are like 50 propulsion companies which are there, uh, but there is no innovation that is going on, because there is no USP that is coming out from this kind of startups that is happening. So yeah, I fully agree with you. If you'd like to add anything onto this, please feel free to add.
Yeah, I will. I will. Very important point that we are discussing, and we are discussing it so frankly. I really like it.
Yeah.
Because, our entrepreneurs, they're really bright kids, very passionate. They they carry their passion on their sleeves, but they do not have the necessary financial literacy. Now,
Absolutely.
Indian schools, Indian colleges do not have uh, the appetite to teach innovators financial literacy. They do not have that mindset. Secondly, we do not know how to commercialize. For a very long time, in a country which has over glorified uh, socialist ideologies, profits, commercialization of technologies is something that
Yes.
was seen as avoidable. I remember one conversation that I had with a very senior scientist out of one of the Department of Space laboratories. And I told him that, look, you've worked on such great missions. You've worked on such great, and these were really successful of our missions. I won't name the mission because people would recognize
Yes.
who that person is. And I just asked him, and this was before the reforms, huh? This was around 2018. I asked him that why don't you spin off your tech? Because your tech can be absorbed in some other industry, non space industry. His answer was, we don't do anything like that. We
Oh,
are not into specialization. Our job is only to do science and we'll stick to it. So when you have the elite in the space ecosystem who have thought like this for a very long time, and when you have a disconnect with the new age entrepreneurs, and these new age entrepreneurs have nowhere to learn from in India, in that case, they would imitate, they would mimic what is happening in Silicon Valley, what is happening in Houston, what is happening in Texas. Now, what's happening in these three locations has nothing to do with India because it's not Indian realms. The innovation, the kind of innovation happening in the United States is endemic
yes.
to US circumstances.
Yes.
Whereas if an Indian startup says that, okay, I'm going to build a space station, if an Indian startup says that I'm going to build a full fledged launch vehicle, where are the contracts?
Yes. I
So
agree with you.
before jumping into a tech development, before jumping into R&D, uh, none of these startups are being told that, hey, please concentrate on something very, very necessary to the Indian ecosystem's needs. Don't try
Yes.
to build everything on their own. And the problem is, the additional problem is, I won't shy away of saying this, is that Indian startups have somebody or the other from DRDO or ISRO coming on board as their advisors or coming on board as distinguished, whatever, this and that. But can't these Indian scientists tell them that this is not the path to take? So that means the consulting roles that their advisors have to play, these advisors are not playing them properly. So
Yes.
that so everybody is taking everybody on a wild goose chase.
Yes.
Now
Absolutely.
that needs to stop somewhere because the situation, as you understand, you keep a tab on it. The global geopolitical, technopolitical situation is quite grim at this point in time.
Yes.
It is not going to come easily,
Yes.
and every money, every penny counts. So Indian startups, if they are lucky enough to gain a pre-seed, seed, or Series A fund, please avoid investing in swanky offices.
Yes. That's true.
Please set up your offices in small towns where the rentals are low.
Yes.
Why is
That's true.
everybody going to Bangalore? Why is everybody going to Hyderabad or Pune or Mumbai? Go to tier 2, tier 3 cities.
Yes.
Set up there. And most of these kids are coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities.
Yes.
So
I
bring down
agree
the
with you.
cost of your operations, be Spartan
Yes.
when it comes to expenses, and deliver on your promises. Deliver what is necessary for India.
Yes.
Don't promise anything that India doesn't need for the next 15, 20 years. Do what is
Absolutely.
needed now. See, you know me very well. I worked on gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. I worked on the Rosetta mission back
Yes.
in the day. I stopped somewhere because I knew India is not ready for that kind of a space mission. I stopped there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I did not pursue anything because after 20 years, I'll turn 50 or so.
Yes.
So, in my productive years, I'm not going to get that kind of opportunity again.
Yes.
So, Indian entrepreneurs will need to know, or even European entrepreneurs, who may be some of your listeners, they need to know that you need to shift gears. You
Absolutely.
need to pick option A, B, C for yourself and your company,
Yes.
and stick to your expertise areas. you may have certain transferable skills from one domain to the other, but stick to it.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you on this, facts. And there are several industrial gaps that are there. Even in the defense side, there are several gaps. I mean, the hybrid connectivity is something that we haven't tried yet, uh, in the defense domain, and even the maritime. Because coming from a coastal area near to Mumbai, that is Alibag, I see a lot of fishing vessels. I see a lot of destruction that happens on the food chain, but unfortunately there is no such tech, especially, I mean, like, at least on the farming side we are seeing the drone and the hybrid satellite imagery. There is some kind of productivity or kind of ease to the farmers that is there in India at the moment. I mean, the kind of policies NITI Aayog has initiated since past few years now, at least there is something, if not nothing. But here we don't see anything on the fisherman's side. That's a huge gap. I mean, like, I have been seeing this since almost since when I was at the age of 5 or 6. And that's the reason I always keep on telling people about the maritime, because I'm coming from that area, and I see there is nothing happening. As a person, I mean, like, I'm not an engineer. If I was an engineer, I would have possibly developed the solution and identified this gap and try to do things. But I try to tell to the people who are operating their company in India, or who are trying to invest in India, try to find this gap. But unfortunately there are the institutionalization and the strategy part of the organization. Everything needs to come together, all aligned very well, then only these solutions can be deployed. Because if a company is trying to identify the gap and sell something in the maritime, that the government approval, the policies, they need to prove it as well. I think everything should be aligned as well along with this. But I believe, of course, the first push should be from the space companies, because if they don't tell what is the gap, then things won't go ahead. But like Jeff Bezos, when he was pitching Amazon to the investors, the common question everyone asked him at that time was, what is internet? So he told them, that's there's a gap, and it's going to boom in the future. So I think that's the kind of strategy the space companies need to utilize as well, in terms of identifying gaps.
I'll try to connect with what you just said with what I said
Yeah.
previously, in the interest of the listeners. That, look, if you are a space company and you are saying that I'm going to build a rocket, you go to, let's say, the government of Maharashtra here.
Yes.
Why would government of Maharashtra be interested in you? They won't be interested because you're not solving any of their own core agendas or
Yes.
their problems. But if you go as a company who says that, okay, I have a solution which will help the fishing community in reaching out to zones where there are fishes, fish-rich zones in the open waters. If you help them with Satcom, if you help them with certain technologies that will keep refrigerated their fishes. There many a times I recently heard that fishing community, they are in need of on ship refrigeration. They don't have it
Okay.
because there are times when these fishing folks, they go into the open waters, they are unable to catch fish, and when they finally find the fish, they see that their ice boxes are completely melted.
Melted. Yes.
So there is a lot of spin-off that can come from space sector into the other sectors, which needs to be translated. That is not
Yes.
happening, and that's the reason why I say that we need to focus on components, we need to focus on systems and subsystems, and try to identify which are the best fit industries for them,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and look out for problem solving.
Yes. That's a big word. It's a very important problem solving.
You should, an entrepreneur should be a problem solver.
Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely.
you can't take cues from Star Trek and Star Wars and sci-fi movies. You can't take it from there. It doesn't
Yes.
work.
Yes. No, I agree definitely. It's an interesting conversation, and I think this is the just the first part of the episode that we have recorded, and now we'll be moving ahead, aligned with the conversation that we just had. We are going to take a little bit deeper dive into the part two of the episode. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in the part 2 of the episode. Thank you very much.